Hi, my name is Aksik, aka Annika. Welcome to my channel. Very happy to see you here. And on this channel we mostly talk about adult coloring, art materials, art, sometimes history, sometimes mythology, whatever pops into my head while I'm doing my coloring or talk about art materials. Anyways, this video is now a continuation, finally, another episode in my slightly neglected series of all my art materials. And today we are talking about all my oil pastels. And I was kind of dithering about, what to do with this video, because initially I thought I was going to do oil pastels, soft pastels, crayons, gel crayons, stuff like this, gelatos, whatever, all in one video. Then I thought that would become kind of a listing of stuff and a bit messy and probably, pointlessly long. I would probably be better off doing a video about just oil pastels and also kind of maybe give a little bit more information, about what I know about them. And I am by no means expert, let's be very clear about that. And also then, maybe show a couple of techniques that, I have a couple that, most of the techniques you probably know, but there's definitely some that you might not have come across, so they might be useful to you. And also talk about kind of prep for oil pastels. And I'm actually starting with that, not prep exactly, but about how they lay down the best. Basically, there's oil pastels and soft pastels both have that in common, that they do like the paper with more tooth. They just, lay down better, they blend better, everything works better if the paper has a bit of a texture or tooth to it. So our coloring books paper is not always obviously the most ideal for it. You can do stuff, of course you can. But you get better results if you put something down first. When I'm going by demonstrations, I actually, I'm going to show each oil pastel or each combination that I'm talking about. I'm going to show on two different notebooks. These are kind of, they seem to be kind of my working notebooks in my videos. I kind of use these for demonstrations and stuff. And why I have these two is this is very smooth paper. They are not full white, kind of slightly creamy undertones, but they're still fine. This is very smooth paper. It's very thin, very smooth paper. And this is quite textured paper. It has quite a bit of tooth. I don't know if I bring it closer, if you can actually tell any difference. Probably not, but I'm gonna show you anyway, how smooth. If you hear the sound, and if I take that other one, you can hear the texture. So I'm going to show you how much of a difference it's going to make if you are using something that has a bit of more tooth. And of course, your coloring book usually doesn't have it, although let's not now say that sometimes the likes of Amazon paper, which do have a bit, are a bit toothy, actually can work pretty well with stuff like oil pastels and soft pastels, because they have more natural tooth than your more expensive and fancy coloring books. So, maybe you could test it a bit there. But what I do if I want to work, more involved way with oil pastels on the page is often I would either finish all the other coloring and then treat the surface. But I'm going to show you first, okay? One way is to put down, satin glazing liquid first and then work on top of it. I usually dilute it about 30 to 40% water, and then, rest satin glazing. And I treat the area that I want to work with oil pastels with one quick layer of that. I just, put it down, let it dry, let it dry properly, which usually, because it's also diluted, you're better off putting it down and leaving it for a while, or you can use your good old heat gun. Nothing is stopping you, and that gives you a bit of a texture that the oil pastels can better grab onto. This is of course really good, but even though you do want some texture, it's often a good idea to take your fine grade sanding block, and before you start working, just give a very, very slight sand. I mean, just a couple of swipes with a sanding block, just to make sure that there's no kind of ridges or, kind of a big textures. Usually there wouldn't be, but, just to be on the safe side. And another thing that works really well, especially if, let's say, you have already colored something and you want background or stuff around it to be done with oil pastels, but you don't want to put satin glazing on top of what you already did. Maybe it's, kind of water materials and you're not sure how they're going to react. So I'm using stuff like this. It works the same with oil pastels and soft pastels. You spray the page with that. Everything, of course, is going to be sprayed. It is basically matte acrylic varnish type of a thing. It's yeah. What does it say? Quick drying. Oh, I don't know what it's exactly called, but it's basically 1:4 acrylic water-based spray. It's clear coat varnish matte. Don't know if you can see that. And that also gives, after you spray the page with that and let it dry, doesn't take huge amount of time, but you should spray it either very well ventilated area, like, stick your hand out of the window with a book or outside, okay? Because you don't really want to breathe it in too heavily, while you're spraying. So yeah, and this one also, once it dries, gives you this surface that, the oil pastels grab better onto. The same with soft pastels. You get better and more vibrant and stronger results if you spray the page with that. So instead of like spraying your pencil work or whatever work with fixative, you would spray it essentially with this stuff, and then you can work on the background with oil pastels or soft pastels. I don't know if I kind of made myself clear. I'm trying to, it's fairly late at night when I'm filming this. And my head is not all there anymore, but hopefully you got it. And, pretty much I think any acrylic matte varnish will do the job. I just happen to have this one, but I have not tried other ones. I know that this one works. So, yeah, that's all I can say about it. Okay, so I'm going to probably leave these at the moment here on the desk, and let's get cracking with I also will talk about tools and such, but and techniques, but probably I will talk as we go along. So my first oil pastels are these. Well, they're not my first oil pastels, but they're just first on the top of the pile that I have next to me. It is not very high pile, okay? You have hope. I don't have, well, I probably have too many for a person who's not really oil pastel artist, but I don't really have like mental amount of them. These are, they came from, they came around on places like Tmall and AliExpress. They are Chinese, from what I know anyway. They're called Kuelox. They were sold as Kuelox, and they were very popular for a while. They were also on Amazon, and people loved them. There was 3 sets. One was kind of pastel tones. One was, I think, kind of natural tones, or just regular base colors. And one was called Morandi, and this is what it seduced me. This is why I got this set. This is the Morandi set, and this is those kind of muted, difficult, interesting colors. that really, really appealed to me. Was I super happy with them? They probably, from all my oil pastels, which granted, you know, I don't have them all, but you know, from the ones I have, are texture-wise my least favorites. They're heavy. I'm gonna show you just a second. When working with oil pastels, you know, always paper towel next to your handy, your fingers, you know, there is no way really to work with them and maintain clean hands unless you maybe wear latex gloves or something like this. But I kind of, it really interferes with my kind of a tactile feel. Like I don't really get the same, I don't can sense the page or what I'm doing the same way if my hands are in gloves. So yeah, I don't really enjoy them. Okay, let's say we take this Neva Blue Green and this really light green. So I'm taking these two. And they have, the oil pastels are square, these ones. They do have numbers on them. There's names on them as well, but those names are in Chinese. And I really was not bothered, you know, kind of trying to translate them. I just, you know, didn't care. I never swatch my oil pastels because you can clearly see. For me, like, there's no point really. You can pretty much, what you see is what you get with oil pastels. So, you know, I don't really care that much. This is the first time for you kind of seeing how different the laydown is and blending is on smooth and textured paper. So in this instance, this time, okay, I'm going to put down the dark one, and then I'm going to kind of blend it out or go into it with the light one. And you see how heavy it lays down, almost clumpy. Can you see that? And also when you put them onto the smooth paper like this, they almost start gliding around with the first layer. Like there's no way you would actually be able to layer them. And here, can you see how differently they lay down? How the tooth of the paper grabs them, and I'm actually almost able to start doing the proper blend here with the pastels themselves. And you see how different, without any other helpful tools, you can already create a blend here on the more textured paper, and how much better and more vibrant it looks and cleaner than this smooth paper version. Okay, let me show you them next to each other. Like this is, the top one is now the textured paper and the bottom one is the smooth paper. But not just the fact that the paper difference, these are, I think, hardest to work with from all my oil pastels. They're not easy. They are a bit temperamental and tend to go down clumpy, but the colors are lovely, so I kind of put up with them a little bit. So the usual method, of course, is to use your finger. So you just take your beloved index finger, in my case, and you just go over like this, and you see how well they blend it out. Just a couple of moves. Even these ones, which aren't my favorite blending wise, on slightly more textured paper. And if I do the same now with smooth paper, doing exactly the same thing, but you see how things kind of glide around and get weirdly mixed up, and you just don't get the same result easily. Top one is the textured paper, bottom one is the smooth paper. So yes, if you in any way can putting some texture onto the paper before you work with them is to your benefit. But then again, some other oil pastels I have work much better on smooth paper. But I can also show you that, for a thick, they go down very thick. Like from the moment they go down, they are thick. But for a thick oil pastel like this, how, let me see, what would we put down that would be kind of slightly matte blend. Okay, let's do like this. So I'm gonna go over that blending area there. So what I am using, what you can use, these are, I think they're called silicone shapers, but the point is that these ones are the mini ones. That there's a lot of, when you're looking for silicone shapers, usually the first results you get are these kind of big ones, the regular ones essentially. But I would get, especially if you're working in coloring books, I would essentially get both, get set of big ones if you want to do bigger areas, but also get the mini ones, because these, especially this specific shape is really great at working around things and putting, kind of color down and, getting into corners and little nooks and crannies. So, okay, I'm going to try to get closer to you. So you just touch it. There's a pretty thick layer of the oil pastel here. So you just touch it gently. You don't put pressure on it. You touch it gently onto the oil pastel, and you just work gently over it. And you can see how smooth it now is. And then if it's smooth like that, you can also do a little bit more with your finger. You can also, of course, do the same thing. Let me clean it first so I wouldn't contaminate the colors. This is now on smooth paper, and I'm putting it down, but I'm not putting huge pressure down. I am gliding over it. As more so than smushing and putting pressure, I am gliding over the oil pastels. But as I said already, on a smooth paper it is harder to get even blends like I did get here, the smooth and even blend. It's hard to get the same quality of a blend on a very smooth paper. Well, that's my experience anyway. It might be that, I don't know what I'm doing, which I most likely don't, because as I said, I am not an oil pastel artist. Another option, of course, is to use cotton buds. I like the ones that have pointed tips, because once again, I can get, if there's any nooks and crannies and curlicues, I can get into them. And once again, I'm just going over and blending it out. It doesn't give the same smooth texture though, because that on top of kind of gently blending also smoothes it out, so you get really kind of a smooth surface. This one, if you go over it, it kind of actually even blends a bit more, but it does also give textured surface. So after you're finished, you're better off kind of pulling over it with finger or something if you want to smooth out the surface here. But I was able to, because of this little yoke, to get pretty smooth blend on a smooth paper as well. So it does help with that. Then let me see, I'm going to clean my finger a little bit before I carry on. So that's about these. And this, of course, can be used with any of the oil pastels or, cotton buds. They would be my trusty friends. But I have some other little things that I do with oil pastels that, have nothing to do with blending tools as such. Okay, So these ones done. Then the next one I have is my next least favorite, kind of. Yeah, it is my next least favorite. And those are 72 colors. I like the big sets because, you know, oil pastels, although they do mix marvelously, you're totally able to mix colors and, you know, blend them together. It's always nice to just, you know, have ready-made kind of a good color palette. So these ones are Paul Rubens. They're kind of they used to have older sets that I know were pretty decent. And then they came out with this one a year or two ago. It's, you know, supposed to be like improved. I actually swatched them, mainly because it did come with a swatch sheet. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done it. But, you know, since it was there, this is typical of me now. If it's there, I'm going to use it. So this is the color palette, you know, on the paper. So I already kind of, you know, blended them out with finger. But, you know, to be honest, I really don't find that it's super necessary to swatch oil pastels, because you can see the colors. It's very clear, you know, what colors you get. Plus, this actually kind of confusing me more because they don't, if I swatch with something that goes in certain order and in certain, you know, amount in a row, I actually want to have, you know, I would have preferred to have kind of three areas here, and then have like narrow swatches that I would put it like this here and see, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this, or, you know, this is here, this is here. As opposed to now I have to go and look for the number and stuff like this on the pastel. So I never, ever use that thing. But, you know, I tested them out. At least it was a good way to kind of, you know, try them out first. Okay, that is my dog who is unhappy with me. She, just a second. She wants her blanket. There you go. Sorry, dog. I'm letting you down. I apologize. If I remember, I will edit it out. If I don't, well, there you go, my life. Examples. Anyways, it has really nice color palette, and what I really like here, it actually has really nice kind of a portrait color palette and colors here as well. Like, there's quite a lot of interesting tones. It has really nice, really dark colors. Some of them, let me see if you can actually see how dark they are. Like, you know, really dark, you know, violets and purples and blues. I would have loved to have even darker green. I think the greens they have, I could have used even darker than this, really. Kind of a almost like black green type of a color. But one thing that and they are really, really creamy when they go down. But my problem with them is, I don't know how to show you. I'm gonna take it out. They are so creamy and so oily that they are literally seeping oil. If I get it close to the camera, can you see the shininess of it? When you pick them up, they're literally oily. And that makes me kind of a bit wary about putting them into coloring books, because I have a feeling that these ones, unless you treat the bottom of the page or something or the other side of the page, they, I think, might go through. They haven't for me. Okay, I have used them and they haven't, so I can't really say. But I think it might happen. But they are very smooth. They are silky but very oily feeling. So let me write down. So Rubens 72 and Rubens 72. Okay, and they are, let me pick some nice colors from here. So okay, let's see. Can you see how, like, often when I pick it up, I actually take tissue and I run it through the tissue like this, so it wouldn't feel oily to hold the oil pastel. And I'm going to also take that. Okay, that's gonna be pretty harsh blend, but okay. I'm taking that kind of a lipstick pink. And let me see now. So I'm going to put them down on both smooth and textured paper, and it's very different. Like with the Kuelox one, you had kind of put a bit of a pressure on them. They were heavier and clumpier. These ones are very smooth, very silky, but they kind of are almost too oily or too silky, almost like slippery feeling slightly. But even on the, you can see the difference. Remember how with Kuelox, I wasn't really able to do a good blend or, smooth blend with the pastels themselves on smooth paper. But these ones I can. And also they don't, because they are smoother and they feel kind of a bit thinner and oilier, they don't go down as thick as the Kuelox ones. So Kuelox ones, yeah, nice colors, but they are difficult to use. And here, and you can see how well, like it takes a couple of layers, but that's the point. I could add other colors on top of it and, play with variations. That is the whole point, that, on the textured paper, you can get much more interesting results. There you go now. If I lift them up a bit more, smooth paper on the left and textured paper on the right now, or now in the center of the shot. Smooth paper and textured paper. And you can get nice blend on both. There are, of course, like they almost feel too oily. But I can also show you, how they blend with the blending tool. But with these ones, you almost don't have to work too much with the blending tool. They almost blend themselves. So ideally, if you put oil pastels down and if you color with them, the best way to actually blend with them is actually, not even with the finger. Finger, yes, if you actually do need to smooth things over, finger actually works the best. I think it's something about the warmth of the finger and the natural oils of the finger. It's just, it's the best. But obviously your finger is pretty clunky, well, at least my fingers are pretty chunky. But you can also absolutely use the blending tool with them to kind of smooth things out and even things out. If things were a little bit thicker in one area, and especially on the smooth paper, you tend to have like unevenness of laydown. In certain areas it's a bit thicker, in certain areas it's a bit smoother, kind of thinner. So this, blending tool really helps. And once again, you don't really put huge pressure, it just glide. I don't know if, can you see how I don't really, put much of a pressure on it. I glide over it. Well, there's obviously slight, kind of pressure on it, but very, very gentle. And I'm just going over it back and forth. Okay. And one thing about also these tools, if you get a set, a lot of them have this little kind of dotting tool on the other end. And what these dotting tools can be really good for is that if you're working in the areas where there's, let's say, there's a petal here, some sort of a little corner, and you need to get into this corner here. So you just grab your dotting tool, you pick up a tiny bit of oil pastel, onto your dotting tool, and you put it in there with the dotting tool, kind of, you know, let it get it into the correct spot. And, you know, whatever you need. I took a bit too little, I think. Just, you know, smooch it out from there. And then you can take either your cotton bud or, you know, whatever you're using, and just, you know, smoosh it around there and blend it out. So yeah, there's many things blending wise you can play with. So even these dotting tools at the ends of these can be useful, but a lot of people actually prefer to do that with like palette knife, you know, like just take a tiny bit, but not probably with this one. You need something a bit sharper and finer. But, you know, palette knife, take a tiny bit, like scrape onto the palette knife like this, and then kind of get it into the area. Actually, I took it with the wrong side. You need to take it with this side. You can see with this side. So actually the side that you put it down, that you can get it into the right spot. So yeah, there's they are, and the colors, of course, I think are really nice in this set. And if I were to try, you know, have like big portrait somewhere, kind of really nice, you know, big area portrait, I would probably almost give it a try with these, just pure oil pastel blending, not that much even blending tools, because the colors are definitely here to work portrait. So, you know, it would be pretty easy to do portrait work with these. So yeah, they're nice. It's just the extreme oiliness of them can be a bit scary. But, you know, they're oil pastels. So what are you, you know, what's your point? They're oil pastels and you're, you know, upset that they're oily. Next ones, okay, are also Paul Rubens, and they're the ones that they were more forgotten ones. This is a small set. Small, 36 isn't not that small, but basically I think it was kind of like their original set, I think, was 48 or something, and then this was like this additional set of pastels, and I had gotten myself this additional set of pastels at some stage quite a long time ago, and then I forgot about them. I forgot about them, and I hadn't really used them, and they now are not as oily as the new ones. They are, let me just grab a couple of colors from here that I can just, you know, kind of blend together for your entertainment. So these are Rubens 36. Rubens 36. Okay, and here they are. I'm going to take these two colors and I'm just going to put them down, and they don't lay down the same way, the older ones, than the new kind of 72 set. The 72 set is way creamier, way smoother, way oilier. These ones are closer to Kuelox texture wise. You know, they go down pretty thick. They are a bit drier, and then they would be to the new 72 set, the HAIYA. I think it's called HAIYA. For some reason they call it HAIYA. And I'm going to put it here down as well, and you, of course, you know, can immediately see how much better they lay down. You know, all oil pastels, they like the texture. So here we go. And this one here, let's do the finger. This is the smooth paper, and you know, these ones have pretty heavy kind of a consistency. So it's not easy to actually blend them out, especially on the smooth paper, when they tend to just glide around and tend to get like thin spots and thicker spots as you move them around. On this surface here, it is going to be easier because the tooth holds onto them while you're blending them, so you get pretty smooth blend. And let me see, I'm going to kind of clean my finger a little bit, otherwise it gets so clunky. And where's my beautiful, okay, here you are, my wonderful blending tool. And this is now the silicone tool. So you get these pretty much everywhere on Amazon, on Temu. They don't cost much. They come in sets with different shapes, and you can do stuff with the shapes, and you can do stuff with these as well, not just the kind of picking up the oil pastel, but you can also do other stuff with it. You can create, let's say, grasses and stuff. And on this paper, so I'm going to go fairly gently, but yeah, this has much heavier texture and does not blend as kind of as smoothly, and doesn't glide the same way as Rubens 72 says, but it is way drier. You know, you won't probably run the danger of actually, you know, having oil leaks in your book. But I still, you know, this is one of the sets that I'm almost, you know, thinking, do I want to keep it, or will I maybe send it to my daughter's school? I do like that it comes with 3 whites. I always know white is always good. White is what you use for lightening anything. You pretty much can take any of these sets, you know, any of these color combinations here, and go, and you want this lighter, you just put some white on top and you go over, blend it out, and you get whiter spots. You can create clouds really easily with it, textures. Now you can do a bit of blending, then add a bit more texture on the top. You can do a lot with whites. You know, you can, you know, keep playing. At the moment I just randomly toss things down, not in the most organized way, but yeah, whites are great. It's like if you work with gouache and acrylic, you know, 2 of the most important colors to have. Actually, the most important is the white, but also black. 2 of them are needed in all of them. And then there's now my 2 kind of favorite sets. This one would be the next one I'm talking about. I'm going to write it down. So that's Pentel 50 set. So it's 50. I'm not going to even pretend that my handwriting is in any way good or decent. Just a second, gonna have a sip of water. Okay, so Pentel 50 set. This one gets sometimes bad rap, and hear me out, I don't think it's justified. It's actually a good set, and it's a good set for different purposes and for the different stuff you can do with it much more easily. These ones are harder. They're smaller. Their size-wise are about half the thickness of the regular oil pastels. Let me open something and just, you know, show you. These oil pastels are pretty much kind of almost standard, you know. That would be the thickness they usually are. And this is Pentel. So you see that it's almost like, not exactly half, but, you know, it's way slimmer. And you can see from the top here how much smaller it is. Now, and what they are good for? Well, obviously because they are smaller and they are harder. they are good for details. If you need to draw or color something that, you know, maybe you do the big areas with, you know, more creamy and soft oil pastels, but these ones are great, you know, if you need to work smaller areas or details. Let me show you. I have in this book, let me find the page. Here it is. This portrait now is done almost fully with oil pastels. I think those spines on her back were done with acrylic markers. The rest of it is all oil pastels, except I added some Prismacolor here for the eyelashes and eyebrows. But, you know, majority of it, and, you know, some like pen here to kind of bring some strands out, because you can't really do that with oil pastels. But yeah, some acrylic marker here, just decoration purposes. But the hands, the face, the hair, you know, the body is all done with these. And you pretty much can use them almost like pencils. They blend out, you know, they're not as hard as that. They are harder than the other ones I'm talking here, but they are still oil pastels. They're still soft. They are still, you know, totally able to blend them out beautifully. Let me show you these. These ones, I don't really do finger blending with them. I'm sure it is possible, but I essentially blend them with themselves. So let's say I'm going to take this. And they also have nicely names on them, like this is dark carmine, names and numbers on them. I do not know if you can buy them open stock. This one I haven't actually researched, sorry about that. But I could see that, you know, especially if you're working, you know, mainly like portraits or something, there are certain ones that will wear down much faster than the other ones. So it would be nice if they were open stock. I do have to kind of, you know, check it out. Mine are nowhere near actually needing an open stock, but yeah, it would be probably great. So let's say I take these three, you know, for funsies. So this is dark carmine, this is pale vermilion, and this is pale brown, which is beige essentially. And I'm, you know, in this instance, I'm just showing, you know, how I would work with them. So they go down a bit drier, but also tighter than the other ones. And of course, you know, you can always, if you need to work in really tight area, you can take a knife or palette knife and kind of take a slice off and kind of create a corner to work with. So I'm going to take this one, and you can see, you can also, like at the moment, I did this area really thick, but I am loosening the pressure here as I'm working. So I'm going into it now with pale vermilion and over it as well. And, you know, you need to kind of, I worked them kind of in several layers and added stuff, and now I am softening the pale vermilion and going into that beige, and you can go back and soften things further in some areas. So these, and you pretty much get pretty decent, because they are a bit drier and a bit harder, you get pretty decent texture. And on the okay, let's get closer with that so you can probably see better. Okay, so this is now the textured paper. So I'm working that one here, and I'm going to put some, so that was dark carmine, so I'm putting some pale vermilion on top of it. So I'm essentially mixing these two to create some skin shadows, let's say. And I'm not working very precisely here or anything, I'm just showing you the principle. You know, loosening the pressure, going into the pale brown, which essentially to me is beige. Working that over. And, you know, I can keep layering and playing here. You know, lightening or darkening, changing direction. You know, you can do a lot with these ones. So I actually like them a lot. I think they are great. You can pretty much do full coloring. You know, if it's not very, very tight and very small and very detailed image, you can actually do a proper page only with these. So if you are getting oil pastels, you know, to kind of try out, and, you know, you kind of work almost like a crayon, but better, these are the ones that you should be, you know, they're cheap also. They're really cheap. So absolutely recommend them, you know, great for playing and trying out, kind of like if you want to transition a bit and have something safe in between really kind of creamy and super soft oil pastels and, let's say, crayon or pencil, then these are absolutely fantastic and I totally recommend them. Very good to work with. Very happy that I got them. And now let's get into my favorite set, which, you know, is surprise to nobody. It is pretty much, you know, anybody who uses oil pastels in coloring books has pretty much said, yep, these are the ones, kind of really the best really for their purpose. Mine happened to, I wanted 72 set and it only came in a wooden box. So wooden box I have. It was actually, you know, on very good. It was one of the Amazon days and I got it for a really good price. So it's not as scary as it looks. And it's not as fancy as it looks. So those are Mungyo Gallery. And it's a 72 set. Of course I love, you know, well, actually I don't love the wooden box because it takes a lot of space on the desk and it's a pain because of that, but the colors are fantastic. It does have bigger sets as well, but, you know, 72 for my needs, absolutely, you know, perfect. Don't need any more. These, the texture wise and blending wise, are, you know, kind of this the perfect medium type of a thing. You know, they really are the best choice for a colorist. And once again, you know, no swatch, but you can clearly see the colors. Like there's no, you know, as I said before, what you see is what you get. It's clearly visible what colors they are. So I never feel any need to swatch them, really, no. And once again, I would love to have some even more dark greens. This is the darkest that they get, this one. And although it is nice and dark, but, you know, I prefer to have something even darker. But as I said already, you can mix, you know, you can layer, let's say, you know, add a bit of dark blue or maybe even some black, you know, kind of sneakily underneath the green and blend them together. So yeah, you can definitely, you know, darken them. But they are, let me pick the colors first before I go and kind of go nuts about them. Okay, let's take this dark brown and this, and they do also have names in English, which I do appreciate. They have brown and burnt orange, you know, just in case you do want to make some note for yourself, you know, which one I used. That is kind of easier with these. They have beautifully silky texture. I have to kind of move into that pace, and they work pretty decent even. If you put them down, you can almost feel immediately, it's almost a relief, you know, to start working with them. They are lovely and silky and smooth when they go down, and they blend really well. So yeah, and also they don't get that kind of a clunky chunky feel when, like I said with Kuelox and the Rubens 36 set, that you get this kind of a chunky laydown. These are, you know, kind of smooth and really, really beautifully blendable. And I'm going to put them here right away as well, and then do the blending closer to the camera, and just so you can see. And here the texture, you know, once again, bit of a tooth makes everything better. And although it looks like it goes down first, you know, worse, because there's like, you know, holes in it essentially, you know, there's a lot of texture, but it actually grabs, you know, when you start blending, it grabs the pigment, you know, the oil pastel so much better, and the blend is so much easier to achieve. So first the finger blends, smooth one. So finger on the smooth paper, and like with everything, you know, it can be, but it kind of gets the least of that, you know, that you, when you're moving it with your finger on the smooth paper, then in some areas you essentially wipe it off. But even here you can see, you know, how you can, you know, especially if you put a bit more pressure on, you just basically take some of the oil pastels off almost as you're blending it with the finger. Whereas if you work in the textured area, you can see how clean and how smooth, and you don't get those splotchy areas. You get perfect blend. So yeah, treating the page, if you can, and if you can be bothered, you can totally do it with on a smooth paper as well. It's just, you know, I find it a bit more difficult, but totally doable, you know. But let's say, okay, let's just take the cotton bud here for funsies. And once again, you don't put hard, heavy pressure on it when you're blending. You kind of try to be pretty gentle with it, because if you put hard pressure, then you basically take off the oil pastel off the page. And especially, you know, if you're working on the smooth paper. Here I find, but this one, that where's my beautiful thingy-maling? Okay, that this silicone tool actually, to me, works better. You can see, you know, you get smoother, more even blend with it. And the other one, you can also, you know, I can show you a bit with the cotton bud. And on the textured paper, you can pretty much, you know, use anything. It'll work. It's just so much easier to work on it. Or you can use the silicone tool. And if you're working on the more textured paper, you can even put tiny bit more pressure with the silicone tool. If you put more pressure on the smooth one, you're just going to pull off the oil pastel from it. So, you know, here you can see they all work, okay? If you have one and, you know, don't have the other ones, you can do stuff with all of them. It's a matter of, you know, like, since I have them all, I have my favorites, and I will probably eventually let go of the Kuelox, because for the purpose I'm using these things, Kuelox just doesn't work for me very well. The Rubens 72, it actually is really nice to use when you're actually using it, you know, if you're blending with it. It is very oily, but, you know, if I don't use it, let's say if I work in someplace else or in a book that I don't really care, you know, one-sided book, or I treat the other side, or put some wax paper in between, they're actually very nice to work with. They are very, very smooth and lovely to blend. The Rubens 36, I think, might eventually find a new home as well. But the Pentel is great. Pentel has its place, and, you know, it's lovely to work things like portrait or kind of a finer detail stuff. Okay, I had planned to also show you some other stuff, but this video is getting now super long. But okay, I'm going to show you very quickly. Let's say this is called Bloom, this book by Ali Koch. And, you know, it has nice big flowers here. I could work with the smaller ones as well, but, you know, at the moment I can't be bothered really messing around. So let's say I am taking this set. Okay, so that's the Paul Rubens set. And something that I wanted to show you quickly. I will do a video about it in more detail eventually, and hopefully quite soon. That, you know, how I work and things you can do. But I just wanted to quickly show you. This is, you know, the oil pastels. So if you were to dissolve them with something or thin them with something, it would obviously be what? Oil. So say hello to baby oil, the cheapest, you know, unfanciest thing that you can possibly imagine. Good old baby oil. There's of course different ones available, but this was great. And there's also different, like you can use linseed oil. I think you can use that oil as well, you know, to kind of create almost oil paint. But I find this one actually works for me, at least, you know, in this way the best. And baby oil, and the brushes I am using are do you know those really cheap cosmetic brush sets that come with these fairly kind of, they're not exact, they're not rough, but they're not very soft brushes. They have a bit of a spring to them. Okay, can I show it? They do have a spring like this, but they're not rough. It's a smooth bristle, but they're pretty solid, pretty strong brushes. And so is this one. These are also kind of, I think, the nail art brushes, and they basically look like small filberts, both of them, kind of slightly rounded ones. And paper towel, of course. Here you go, paper towel. And baby oil, how I use it. Okay, I'm particularly lazy about that. So I'm opening the thing, and I'm dripping a couple of drops into the lid. Literally a couple of drops. You don't need more than a couple of drops. You know, don't fill a container or anything. You just need a couple of drops. And you take the brush and you kind of dip it into the oil. You kind of smush it around slightly in oil, but you don't get it very oily or anything. And then you take the paper towel and you actually tap the excess oil off, just like you would if you were submerging your brush in water and it had too much water in it. You don't want too much oil. You just want some oil residue in the bristles. Okay, and then you can do it in two ways. Let's say I'm going to take this one here, and I'm going to put it down there, and then I'm going to maybe add some of that. It's quite bright. Maybe add some of that, which is quite dark here, and maybe add some of orange. Just, you know, kind of toss things around. And now you can actually take that brush and work it like paint. If you do decide to work like that, please keep in mind, make sure that you take excess water out of your brush. Okay, excess water, excess oil. It works better if your brush is not swimming in oil. And kind of make sure that you are willing to kind of risk, just in case there is a slight chance that the oil might go through to the other side of the page. It doesn't matter at all if it's, you know, one-sided book like this one. Now things are getting heavy, so what I'm doing is I'm wiping some of the oil pastel off. I'm going into the lid thing again. I'm just going to dip it into the oil, tapping it off so I wouldn't have, you know, huge amounts of oil. I actually put, you know, smushed it in too hard. I shouldn't really smush it in that hard. And now it basically dissolves everything again. So you just work it like this. And you get this fairly smooth and, you know, interesting color variations. And of course you can keep adding stuff, you know, you can grab, these are now Paul Rubens ones, so here you go. And you can also take your you know, if you don't want to now to work the brush anymore, you can also use with your blending tool. But you create the base essentially, like a, using it like a paint. And with this thing you can get into small nooks and crannies, you know, move it around, play with it, smooth out the texture, you know, if it gets kind of uneven and clumpy someplace. Let me get you closer because I'm working far, far away from you. So I'm being pretty sloppy here at the moment. I would be probably a bit more precise. But you also have to take into account the fact that, you know, if you're working with oil pastels, you want a bit of more about, like, you don't really want it like super smooth. You're kind of losing the painterly effect of it. So let's say we want to brighten this petal here, so we're going to put some of extra yellow here, and we can just, you know, smooth it out with our finger here, or we can use cotton bud. Do I have cotton bud here? So gently though, you know, if you're working the cotton bud, work it gently. And, you know, if you're working on the edge, try to kind of tighten it. And if you get something over the edge here, let's see here, you can essentially, you know, take a clean cotton bud and swipe it off. And let me see, let's do it again so you can see again. So let's put down some more color, let's say here, and just, you know, you can already put color variations kind of down a bit randomly, but these are going to be pretty warm, so we want them, oh here they are, this one is here. It's like, it's also red but slightly different red, just, you know, play with slight color variations, and they all get blended together eventually and kind of start shining on their own. Okay, these ones I'm going to push in here with the tool. I need to put some darker stuff here in this area. Let me see. But if I get, you know, if I start getting too close to the line here, I actually leave it, you know, if there's little gaps there, I can push it with my blending tool later on. Okay, and let's say this light orange. And a lot of the blending can already be done, you know, on the page, but because it's a smooth paper, there's only so much blending you can do here with the pastel itself. So, you know, a bit of an oil like I'm using here is actually beneficial. And I'm going over the really dark area as well. Let me see if I can wipe it off a bit. And now I have my, where's my little thing, and making sure that I tap excess off. And I'm starting, you know, if I'm dissolving the color like this, I'm starting with the lightest area, obviously, and then working my way. And this way you get kind of pretty, you know, heavy and, you know, more of a clumpy and painterly blends. But I'm also showing you another way quickly. We can, you know, as I said, I can, if you want me to, I can make, you know, more detailed video. And once again, I am not an expert. Absolutely not. Don't even think about it. I've played with oil pastels. I would like to play with them more. I should play with them more because I do actually enjoy them. I think they find really interesting medium. You know, since I enjoy them, I should really work with them more. But now this is now, you know, just, you know, and you can also now take your finger and kind of go over carefully and, you know, smooth things just gently, especially, you know, in the bigger areas if you want to smooth them out a bit. And then in smaller areas where you can't really, you know, get into your finger, you take your blending tool, make sure it's kind of like slightly sideways, and with a very, very gentle movements, you kind of smooth things out. And, you know, if there's any gaps between the oil pastel and the line art, you can also gently bring the oil pastel where you want with that little tool. So, you know, this is how that works. But there's also, I'm doing it very quickly, okay, and on another flower I probably should, you know, kind of make them different if I'm making it that way. Okay, what color are we going to make the other flower? Let's make it a variation of some sort of a purple and pink. This one, for example. So if I use now oil pastel as a paint, then you can go all in and totally use it as a paint. So here it is. Can you, okay, I should choose really something that you can actually see. Okay, I'm going to take that purple, you know, kind of this color here. So what I'm doing is I am wetting my brush and wiping off, and this is me cleaning the brush now, essentially. To clean the brush, yeah, previous color off, you dip it in oil and you take your paper towel and you keep dipping it in oil and, you know, wiping it off into the paper towel, the previous color. And this is how you get the paint off. You clean your brush with oil. And these brushes, you know, once you decide that you use them for oil pastels, that's the only thing I'm using them for. I don't use this brush for anything else, obviously. And then I'm going to add another drop, literal drop. Okay. You got a squirt, don't do it over the page. Luckily nothing happened, but you know, don't do it over the page. It's the short one. Okay, so once again, I have that lid in front of me. I dip or tap my brush into the oil. I tap it also onto this paper towel so this excess is off. And now I'm going to the actual oil pastel. Can you see which one? Okay, you can't. Okay, I'm going to actual oil pastel like this. And I'm picking up oil pastel like I would pick up paint with the brush. And because I have that oil on my brush, I can put color on the page. And now if you work this way, you know, obviously dilute the paint fair bit. You work in layers, essentially. You know, you add one layer, because this one goes down pretty thin. And of course, you know, like with every oil pastel technique, it also tends to work better on slightly more textured paper, but you know. So you can essentially put down a base for your image with oil pastels. And you can work, of course, on top of it on oil pastels as well. But, you know, slight dip. But as I said previously, like here, I'm, you know, taking more. This is now a different color. Just, you know, to scrape some stuff off. And, you know, there's a darker color here. And you can pretty much, you know, blend it out softly. Like this. And you get very different texture and very different results. So, you know, things you can do. And you can, you know, keep adding different colors to it. You know, quick dip into the oil. Tap it off. Let's get even darker color. Which one did we use here? So let's get into that kind of ultramarine looking color. And we can put that one here. And you just need to kind of keep moving it around to smooth it out. If you take too much on, as I did this time, like it was a bit too much on my brush, you know, to take. But I can, you know, keep moving it around and smoothing it and get a smooth base for this petal. And pencils will go on top of it, especially things like Prisma. But usually if I do that, I work on top of it with more, you know, layers of oil pastel. So, you know, another way to work with oil pastels. So thank you very much for watching. This video now went on for way too long, but you know, it is what it is. That's life. Thank you very much for staying for so long. If you did, hope you have loads of lovely creative time, that you found something interesting here, and have happy, healthy, and wonderful weekend. Bye bye.